Of progress. Joining me now is Congressman Jim McDermott, Democrat of Washington. He represents SeaTac, the first place in the country to adopt a $15 minimum wage. And he's a sponsor in the House of the new $15 minimum wage bill that Bernie Sanders is pushing. Thank you for being here.
It's good to be here, Rev.
Congressman, you saw that woman today. What stories are you hearing from constituents?
Well, her story, as you say, there are millions of people who could stand up on television and tell you exactly the same story. If you're making $15 an hour and you work 40 hours a week, 4 weeks a month, you make about $28,000 a year. That's under $30,000. Now, if you're trying to raise yourself or take care of yourself and raise a couple of kids, $30,000 does not go very far at all. Now, if you're making $10 or $7 an hour, you've got to work 2 jobs, and that means you got to work 80 hours a week, 4 weeks a month to make the same amount of money. That's why it has to be increased. You cannot expect this mother to work 80 hours a week and then go home and take care of her family. We say we have family values in this country. We don't show it to people who are working trying to make it. And we have to give them a decent amount so that they've got enough money so they can take care of their family and also be a mother or a father to their kids.
Congressman Santia Bailey published an article about her miscarriage, and she wrote, and I'm quoting from the article, "I know that once the senators read this, they will offer me their condolences. But I don't want sympathy. I just want them to make sure the contractor I work for at the U.S. Capitol pays a living wage." Can stories like hers help bridge the partisan divide and reach Republicans, Congressman?
If they can't, we're going to have a huge turnout of people in this election because following people who are talking about raising the minimum wage. If you're not talking about raising the minimum wage, you're not talking about working people in this country and what they're facing, because these people who are working for $7 and $8 an hour very often don't have even any kind of health insurance. And if they live in a state where their governor has refused to take Medicaid, they don't have access to Medicaid. They have nothing. They don't have enough to take care of their family. They don't have health care. They are really behind the 8 ball, and they're going to come out and vote in this election, and we're going to have a change.
And the facts are that since 1968, the productivity of U.S. workers is up about 140%, but the value of the minimum wage has actually fallen 50%, factoring in inflation. Isn't this the real story of the American worker, Congressman?
When we set the minimum wage a number of years ago, we said it would bring you up to the poverty line. And we haven't changed the minimum wage, but very little over the last 15 or 20 years. And that's why the workers are falling further and further behind the line that the government says is the poverty line. Never mind having a little bit extra to spend, they haven't even got what we consider poverty. And that's why we have to change this thing. It ought to be indexed to inflation. That's the first thing that ought to happen, so that when things go up, when the cost of bread goes up, so should your salary go up. Yeah. That's really how it ought to work.
Congressman Jim McDermott, thank you for your time tonight.
You're welcome.